alpacas. They got sheared this morning.
I know.
They look so ridiculous.
Evan and Pedro, they're so cute in their new summer look.
And it's their least favorite day of the year is the day they get sheared, and they have to wander around without their fluffy fluffies, and they're not loving it. But hopefully they'll get lots of treats today, and they'll get over it.
Yeah. Pedro was chewing on his twig.
Yeah.
Right
That's his
after.
favorite.
Maybe he's already over it.
He's over it, yeah.
Well, it's kind of a chilly morning for the shearing, unfortunately, but for the summer it'll be.
For the summer, it'll be so important for their health, because that much fur, I mean, if you saw how much fur came off of Evan, that much fur, that big of a blanket on you 24/7 in 110-degree heat, that's not good. So it's good that they get sheared. This is kind of the time of year everyone gets sheared. We had to shear 2 sheep over at the other farm, too.
Oh.
Yeah, Jackson and Freckles, and they were not loving it, but they looked so much better after they got sheared.
I was amazed how skinny Evan's neck is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're very small animals wrapped in a lot of fluff.
Yeah, not a lot of people know this, but alpacas, sheep are here from Europe, and alpacas are here from much colder climates.
Yes, much colder climates. So and we actually bred sheep to have all that crazy fiber. I mean, that's not normal at all. So what we've done to them, surprise, surprise, like we've done with so many domesticated animals, we've bred them for our uses, despite what it does to them and their health. But alpacas aren't really bred so much. Those fibers are pretty much natural. I don't think we've done horrific things to alpacas yet. Hopefully we don't. It stays a luxury fiber, and they don't try and make it like the new wool of, the 2000s.
Right.
Keep our fingers crossed.
They live in the Andes.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Is they're mountainous creatures. That's why they grow all that fur. Pretty though. Okay, so we are here this morning. Are we ready to start? We are here this morning with Anna and Brian of Those Annoying Vegans, and I don't know why they have that name, because they're the least annoying people I've ever met in my life, but that's the name they've given themselves. This is our very first podcast, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time introducing Kindred Spirits Care Farm, because otherwise, who the heck am I, right? Why am I sitting here interviewing people? And then I'll probably do the exact same questions that I'm going to answer myself. I'll have you guys answer for yourselves. So for those of you who are just turning in for the first time, Kindred Spirits Care Farm. Wow, who are we and why did we start? We are a very unusual organization. We're a nonprofit organization that started, we actually are working at public high schools in the Los Angeles urban area. We have run vegan sanctuaries at these public high schools, because the whole concept is, as a sanctuary in general, it's always the concept is, if people meet pigs as individuals, if people meet meat animals, if they meet egg layers, if they meet meat chickens and turkeys as individuals and fall in love with them, it'll be just so much harder to, participate in murdering them and participate in the horrors of factory farming and consuming the flesh and products of these animals who are lovely, lovely individuals. So that's kind of where it started, with that original concept. And in terms of how it originally started, way back in 2009, I had just left an animal rights nonprofit. It was my first nonprofit experience as an executive director, and I was frankly not all that pleased with the experience. I was kind of disappointed in what I experienced, both as a nonprofit and in terms of the efficacy of the activities that they spent so much time doing. And actually several other people left the nonprofit at the same time I did. And we got together and started saying, we just brainstormed and said, what if we were going to think about and create the most amazing nonprofit in the world? What would it look like? What kind of attributes would it have? Who would it welcome? Who would it try to help? How would it help the world be a better place? How would it help the world heal and recover from the misery that we see in almost every level of our society anymore? I mean, and like I like to do in life, we sort of overthought it. We spent days with huge pieces of construction paper, and we wrote down notes, and we had Post-it notes, and we put stars next to things and arrows from this to that and the other thing, and we came up with sort of a list of things that had to be part of what we wanted to do. We had no idea that would be called Care Farm. We just knew that it had to have a sanctuary, a vegan sanctuary for farmed animals. That was one critical component. The other critical component, it had to have vegetable gardens so people could learn not only who they should not eat, but what they should eat and how they can grow it for themselves. Empower people to actually be able to have this kind of food in their lives. And then we wanted to include everybody, anybody who felt left out, who was wounded, who was hurt, who our society had marginalized or victimized in some way, because we knew that being in the presence of these beautiful animals and in the presence of gardens would heal people. We knew it intuitively. If they had access to an environment like that, they would heal. They would feel better. We knew because we ourselves had experienced those things at sanctuaries and in gardens. So we thought that combination would be just magical and fabulous, and people would have to feel better. And only later did we learn that actually has a name, and there's actually thousands of them in Western Europe. Not vegan, because most of them are not vegan, but they're called care farms, and there's literally thousands of them in England and the Netherlands and those places. And it's actually supported by the government and by insurance companies because they've done studies, longitudinal studies, with people who participate in care farms and seen that, yes, it helps people with anxiety, with depression, with anger issues, with impulse control, with social isolation, with all those kinds of issues can be helped by working in a care farm environment, working with animals and or plants, and not just while they're at the care farm, but also like 6 months later, they still have less anxiety, less depression, better control over anger and impulse issues, and less feelings of social isolation.
Is that why we feel so good after we leave Kindred Spirits Care Farm?
Exactly.
It's all planned.
It's all on purpose. It's all part of our evil plan to make the whole world a better place.
Well, that's why we keep coming back. Every Saturday we're here, and that's what we experience. We leave here feeling so joyful.
Exactly.
And we see how it impacts the people who come here and interact with the animals and spend time in the garden, the kids especially.
Yes, exactly. So that in itself just makes my whole life, really, because that's what I've dedicated my life to trying to create for people, is that. And so the fact that you say that it's working makes me super, super happy. Okay, so just to finish the story up, we got together, we got this concept in our heads, like this is what we would like to make. But we had no money, we had no sanctuary, we had no land, we had no animals, we had no gardens. So it kind of was, okay, well, we've got the vision now, so that's good, right? You got to have that as your beginning place. And then I went to start to work for other animal sanctuaries because I'd never worked with large animals before. I'd never worked with horses or cows or goats or sheep, and I knew I needed that experience. So I went to go work at some sanctuaries, and I learned a lot about animals by working at those sanctuaries. A lot of things you should do and maybe some things you shouldn't do. all important learnings, right? And then I was I realized that in order to do a really incredible job with the gardens, I wanted to get a permaculture design certificate. Because permaculture was something I'd been learning about, and it was a frame of mind that really resonated with me. I liked the idea of not imposing yourself on the world, but actually working with nature and working with the way that nature wants to do things anyways in order to achieve your goals. So I went to get my design certificate, and as a part of that certificate, we were broken up into teams because we were supposed to actually implement some kind of a permaculture project as part of getting the certificate. So I convinced my team somehow that what we wanted to do was a vegan care farm, and somehow they bought it and said, okay. I don't know how I did that part, but it was like one of those magic things that happened. Like, oh, look. But I said, great, now we all have this idea, and it's a terrific permaculture project idea, but there's still the little small issue of no land, no money, no animals.
Important detail.
Yeah, a minor detail. And said, I don't have any, it's like if I had money, I'd go buy it right now, but I don't. But one of them, and I don't remember who it was, one of my teammates had the brilliant idea, well, if we don't have our own land, let's use somebody else's. Like, why didn't I think of that? It's brilliant. So we all were tasked with going off and trying to find, part of our homework was find places who might be willing to let us borrow or use land to start this care farm and this permaculture gardens.
Location scouting.
Exactly. I'd never done that before. that was a great idea. And I was surprised because the next time when we came back to meet, I was surprised how many places actually were open to the idea of having a vegan care farm on their property. We looked at hospitals and schools and churches and people who just had some extra land because whatever it was given to them as passed down through generations or whatever, they'd had land. And I was surprised, like 3 other people came back and said, yeah, I found somebody who's willing to listen to a proposition. And but I had the coolest place because I actually had seen this school several years earlier, back actually in like 2009, and this was like 3 years later. And I found it because I have no sense of direction. And I had a friend who lived on this street, Elkwood, and I got lost trying to find my friend's house. And I was driving up and down Elkwood Street trying to find my friend's house, and I drove past this crazy place. I didn't know it was a school or someone's house or a farm or what the heck this crazy place was, but there was a big old stretch of grass, and there was some goats and some geese and some chickens, and I was like, what the heck? Who has goats and geese and chickens? And
So some of these geese were here?
yeah, these geese were here. I mean, Wilbur's 21 years old. They didn't have any gardens of any kind, so that was just crabgrass, open crabgrass. But I was like, I was peering through the gates, kind of going, what is this place? I gotta know more. And for some reason, I actually got my camera out and took some pictures, and I kept them. And I had pictures. I still have pictures from 2009 when I first stumbled on this place, literally. And then in 2013, when I was looking for a place, I knew it was on Elkwood, so I used my wonderful sense of non-direction, and I just started driving up and down Elkwood again, trying to see if I could stumble back into it. And I did. I stumbled back into it, and they actually had a huge banner on the interior fence that said, please help save our farm, with a phone number.
Oh, no kidding.
And I was like, normally I'm pretty shy about just approaching strangers with crazy propositions, but since they asked and they had a phone number, I called and said, hey, I'm trying to do my permaculture design certificate, and you say, please help save our farm. And I can't promise anything, but I would love to be able to use your farm as my project. I'll measure your farm. I'll make a to-scale map. We'll make a list. We'll do a presentation for you for the things that we think permaculture could help with. And, would you be willing to let us have access to your farm to do that project? And he was a wonderful guy. And he said, well, as long as it costs $0.00, knock yourself out. And I was like, perfect, because we have $0.00, and I can't promise you anything except a presentation. So he said, great. And he handed me keys, which was unheard of. And maybe I shouldn't say that for LAUSD, because that was totally wrong. He should never ever have done that. And I would never do that to anybody else, mind you. And he left.
It was attached to the school back then still?
Huh?
It was still part of the school.
It was part of the school. I mean, he gave me keys to the exterior fence so I could come in and measure and do things and monitor and take soil samples and all that kind of stuff. And I was a total stranger to him. He should never, ever have handed me keys, but he did. Bless his heart.
He could tell that you had good intentions. So.
Well, I did. I absolutely did. But you'd never find a principal doing that anymore. End of story. That would never, ever happen now. But the good news is he did, and we measured the whole farm. We made a scale map of it. We mapped out all the trees and all the barns and all the how the water flowed across, how the sun moved in the daytime, where there was shade, where there was hotness, and we did a presentation. But of course, as I worked on the farm, I found all kinds of things that needed fixing, and I couldn't help myself. I had a broken door on the chicken barn, and I knew that was very bad for the chickens to be exposed to any stranger who climbed the fence and wanted to play around. So I fixed the barn door, and then I started fixing other things. And then I got some ideas about, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we had a garden? And the science teacher here, bless her heart, she was already vegetarian, but very soon after meeting me, and we were walking and talking about what works and what doesn't work on the farm. And she went vegan really fast, which is totally great. She's been a fantastic champion of the farm and of what we're trying to accomplish here. And the two of us just started brainstorming ideas, and because she always wanted a garden, but she's only one person, and there wasn't a lot of support, just from LAUSD or any place else. It's expensive to get these things started, and a garden takes a lot of work. So she thought, well, gosh, if you guys are willing to help us, then let's actually do it. So the first 3 years we were here, we actually spent most of the time just fixing what needed to be fixed. There was a lot of issues with the different barns, and the animals were not being fed the proper foods, and there's just I could go on and on about issues. So we spent the first 3 years trying to make it into, the vision that we had of like a place that had happy animals that were in a vegan situation, where they were safe from predators, where they were safe from human predators and problems, and building a garden that was safe from the animals, and a garden that was based on permaculture principles, where we didn't impose ourselves. We looked at what wanted to grow here and how best we could grow things by improving the soil rather than just sticking a bunch of chemicals onto the soil to force things to grow. And took 3 years to do that. So we were pretty much invisible for the first 3 years. And then in 2017, that's when we started trying to make people know that we existed, because we're 100% volunteer. So we were running out of money, because we were basically just using my savings to fund everything. And my savings was not looking so healthy. So 2017, we started trying to get people to know we existed. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this podcasting stuff too, is to make relationships, to make friends, to get people to know what we're trying to do. Because of course my evil plan for the world is that not only would we have this amazing opportunity here at this continuation high school, I should come back to that as well, why this is a perfect place for a care farm. But we'd like to have these kinds of care farms all over the place. I mean, there's thousands of them in Europe, almost none in America. Wow. There's a few of them. People have some horses, and they use horses as therapy animals. But that still means riding them, and I'm not particularly in love with riding animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
and horses aren't consumed for food, so doesn't offer the same
exactly. You can't
connection.
have the same kinds of education with horses that you can with animals who are consumed for food, or their products are consumed for food. So I really, my concept is, vegan advocacy, helping people really meet the animals that they are used for that kind of food. So as far as that kind of thing, I can only think of one other one that I know of that consider themselves a vegan care farm. And even them I've heard lately not as vegan as you would hope. They've got hunters and whatnot on their board of directors.
Well, as we always say, I mean, you're either vegan or you're not. So
exactly.
Not as vegan is code for not vegan.
I'm trying to be delicate and gentle.
Trying to be easy.
Yeah, because they might be listening, and I don't mean to harm anybody or throw anybody under a bus, but I wish that they, are a little bit more
open to the message.
Yeah. Anyway, so I need to circle back to care farming, and why this place was, of all the options that were brought back to our permaculture design certificate team, this was the best option, not only because they already had some buildings here. It was already a farm. We wouldn't have to start from scratch, but also because it's linked to a continuation high school. Which is extraordinary, because, the whole point of a care farm, right, is you bring in vulnerable people, whether they're vulnerable because they're LGBTQ, or they've been harassed for some kind of reason, therefore have social isolation, or whether they've got, emotional issues or mental issues, cognitive issues, whatever the reason is, they come here for healing. So the fact that this farm was at a high school for kids who are at risk, who've experienced social isolation, who've experienced rejection, who've experienced, abandonment, abuse, or neglect, just as these rescued animals have, it was like, I couldn't have asked for a better place to start. It was perfection. So it wasn't so difficult to convince all of my teammates in the permaculture design certificate team that this is the place where we should really go. It's like, look, guys, I know you have a hospital and you have some guy, but this is the place we got to go. Because it has a set of human beings who need this work desperately and can really benefit from this work. And it's the perfect opportunity, because these kids are here with these animals 5 days a week. Because one of the things we saw about so many farmed animal sanctuaries who are doing wonderful jobs and wonderful work, they're geographically remote, right? So it's like the people who need them most, the people who are at risk, the people who are, who believe truly in their hearts that they are omnivores and should be eating animals in their products. Those people aren't going to drive 2 hours out to a sanctuary to go meet animals on their own terms. They're going to you might be able to drag them out there for a field trip, but even then they've got a couple of hours. They're not going to build what's a meaningful the lifetime change relationship based on a couple hour tour of some sanctuary someplace. So
Yeah.
even though these sanctuaries are doing beautiful things and they have a fabulous environment, the people who need them most are not going to be the people who show up. It's going to be the people who are already vegans, already animal advocates, and that's a problem.
Yeah, we need more of these places here in LA, in the suburbs, in the urban areas, in the at-risk communities, lower income communities. It's a great partnership that they have here with the animals and vice versa.
It's terrific. It's terrific.
And to take care of each other.
Exactly. I love that. They take care of each other because it really is true. The kids do great job taking care of the animals under the supervision of the teacher and us. And the animals, of course, take care of the kids. I mean, I can't even tell you, when these kids have a bad day, when something happens at home or something happens someplace, they don't go hang out in the bathroom or, whatever. They run off to the farm. They run off to the farm and either sit with their favorite animal or sit on the benches and just sit under the trees, and that's where they go to chill out. When something is happening, when they have a crisis, that's where they go. They don't run to the counselor's office. They don't run home. They run onto the farm and spend the time recovering in that environment.
Had I had a place like that in high school.
Exactly. And that's why, like, my evil plan is that, I say evil, of course, but I would love every high school to have this, right? This whole farm on this campus is 1 acre. Farm plus gardens, 1 acre. That's the size of a football stadium. And some schools have 2 football stadiums, or they have a football stadium and a huge soccer yard or whatever. They've got land.
And look at all the animals that 1 acre accommodates.
Exactly.
I mean, you don't need that much.
You don't need that much. We could do probably 3/4 or even half an acre. We could do a beautiful start. It's but I think every high school, if you think about most people in their high school experience, I mean, maybe you guys went through high school and it was total cruise time, and like you were like super popular and everyone loved you, and you didn't have people trying to like convince you to do drugs or convince you that you were a loser or any of those kind. But me, high school was like the most awful time I ever had.
Same. I mean, that's what makes it easier to go vegan too. I'm used to it. I was in the minority since high school.
Yeah, I'm accustomed to being an outcast. It was cool because
I was in show choir and drama club.
There you go. I was in drama club too.
Very popular with the ladies. Very popular.
Very popular. Exactly. I didn't experience anxiety. No. I didn't feel insecure almost every minute of my life. I, wasn't called a loser. I didn't have apricots thrown at me. None of those experiences. But I think maybe we're not that unique, and that other people also experience high anxiety in high school. So even if you're not...
Even the popular kids,
Exactly,
I'm sure. So much pressure.
Exactly, because it's a lot of pressure to be popular. And when you're popular, once you're up there, right, then everyone's trying to be more popular than you and tear you down. So
Yeah.
my suspicion, really, if I had to be honest, was that most of us suffer from anxiety and issues and insecurity and crisis during those years. So what better place to have a care farm? What better place? And they say that over 50% of the people who go vegan during the years 17 through 25. So that's the perfect time in your life to learn these messages and to become acquainted with these animals as individuals, as friends, as healers, as ambassadors, and not just be completely uneducated about who they are as individuals. Because, I mean, it really is true. Once you've met a turkey and had a turkey sit in your lap, you just don't want to eat turkeys anymore.
No,
and
how could you? No.
Exactly. And once you've had a pig snuggle up next to you and completely trust you to rub their belly and feed them carrots, how can you eat pork? And once you've fallen in love with any of these animals, you just don't want to be participating in their abuse. It changes the way you think about your world. And that's what this world needs desperately. And once you've worked in gardens, you've learned to empower yourself and enable yourself to grow food that's delicious and nutritious, and you start to feel maybe some of the health effects of eating really good food, and you've broadened your horizons to include vegan food. Like, wait a minute, I was told that vegans eat grass and broccoli and everything has to be like raw and, you don't get much variety. It's like, once they realize how delicious vegan food is and how calm, you feel calmer when you eat vegan food and you eat food that actually nourishes your brain. These kids recognize that. They start off eating Slim Jims and Diet Pepsi, and then they leave knowing more about, hey, Indian food is totally delicious, and Italian food, that's good too, and Mexican food is also fantastic. And wait a minute, maybe there are horizons. Maybe there's some options that I could actually really enjoy that are actually easy for me to fix. I can get without a lot of money, and
it can all be vegan.
It is vegan, and I feel better. I feel stronger. I feel less scared. I make better decisions because I'm not having these sugar rushes from eating a bunch of weird processed stuff that's high in sugar and high in preservatives, and I'm getting better grades. So maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like your average teenager doesn't have access to a place like this where they can form a connection with a farmed animal. We all form connections with dogs and cats and possibly rabbits, animal companions that we have with us at home, but never farmed animals, and that's part of the problem. And we don't form a connection with the foods we're eating either. And that's part of the reason too why they always suggest that you have your kids in the kitchen with you and to help you cook, and when they feel like they're responsible for the food that they're eating, they're more likely to eat it. If they make it themselves, if they grew it themselves. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It really is. It really does. And it's interesting because we actually have a lot of tours here with elementary school kids. Because elementary through college, UCLA loves us because we're very involved with food justice, like you were saying, and what we were talking about is a lot of food justice issues. So they have food justice classes at UCLA, and those people very often are doing internships here because there's not too many places that really deal with true food justice issues the way we do. But I love the idea, and it's really true. These elementary school kids, at home, mom tries to feed them broccoli, right? They're like, oh, I don't want to eat broccoli. That's gross. But they come here, I snap off a twig of broccoli and I say, who wants broccoli? And they're like, I do. And I just, a little cilantro, a little carrot, a little broccoli, some peas, whatever I can find that's fresh around the farm. And I ask them, then they go crazy for this food. So if they see it and they're growing it and they're participating with it, it makes a total difference in their willingness to actually eat it and try it. So that makes it makes a huge difference, absolutely, and it's a good difference.
Yeah.
So there's just so many aspects about this work that are so beneficial to so many different kinds of people.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I just think that I think every place should have one. It blows my mind that Europe has figured it out and we haven't. Why haven't we? It's so bizarre. I don't get it.
Well, there's many things that Europe has figured out that we haven't quite figured out.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
If you just look at London, the number of people going vegan in a city like London compared to LA, which we have more people here. We arguably have more vegans here, even if it's just the 3% or whatever it is, if there's, however many million people in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Just sheer odds. Ton of vegans here.
Yeah.
But the movement seems to be gaining ground very heavily in London and Europe and Israel and
Japan,
it is gaining
Australia.
ground in Australia especially.
Other places it's my gosh, 25% of people are going to be vegan and within a few years. It's like in those places, not in America.
Well, I think
we're working on it.
I think on the coasts and the larger cities there is definitely a huge much larger percentage of vegans, but I still think there is that sort of Midwest American farmer tradition where farmers view vegans as the enemy.
Yes.
And we're not.
No.
We actually need farmers, and that's
Of course.
that's the thing. That's the whole reason why we have jobs. Is because some people, like myself, I don't want to be a farmer.
Right.
I would rather pay a farmer to grow my food, and then I'll just buy the food. And we don't all need to be farmers. We need farmers to grow enough food for all of us.
Yes, we do. And farmers should be paid a decent wage.
Absolutely.
We should pay the appropriate amount for the food that we get.
Yes.
Got this whole weirdness of subsidies and the bizarre things that we do to pay people to make meat and don't pay people to make carrots or broccoli is just bizarre to me. We're so backwards in so many ways.
Yeah.
People who raise broccoli and carrots and all the things that we really should be eating should be paid a living wage and they should be able to make a nice living doing a truly wholesome work. We need farmers and they should be paid accordingly. This whole bizarre idea that they are living, scratching subsistence living it's just wrong. Like teachers, I mean, the people who do the best services for our culture are paid the least and are valued the least, and the people who some, I think, aren't particularly valuable or necessary are paid enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole podcast in itself, isn't
That's
it?
a whole episode. Well, I think that, in the capitalist system in which we operate, your dollar is your vote.
Yes.
And I think that the meat, dairy, and egg industries have done a great job convincing people that they need to vote for
Yes.
meat, dairy, and eggs.
With their dollars.
With their
Yes,
dollars.
absolutely.
So people have this idea that they need to eat meat, dairy, and eggs, and then farmers have this idea that they need to farm meat, dairy, and eggs to feed to people. And I feel like farmers, they believe that they're doing good for the society because they are. They're growing food to feed the nation.
And they're feeding demand, which is what every business on the planet does. There's a demand for something, they fill that demand, end of story.
Right.
And, and over many generations, a lot of these people have been doing this for generations, and their mom and dad said, this is a wholesome, wonderful, important job that you're doing.
Yeah.
And the kids believe that. Why
Of
wouldn't
course,
they? You believe your mom and your dad, right? And if you're told these things since you're pre-verbal, you grow up believing in your bones that this is good, important, wholesome work. We are fulfilling an important function for our world, and how dare anybody like those awful vegans tell us that what we're doing is wrong on any level.
Right.
I get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it. But it's propaganda. I mean, it's not actual reality.
Yeah.
But cognitive dissonance makes it so difficult for people who've been, born and raised in that arena to now even consider an alternative thought, because that kind of makes you think, but then does that mean that my mommy and my daddy lied to me? Does that mean my mommy and my daddy were wrong? I don't even want to put those thoughts in my head. I don't want to consider that at all. No, those people, those nasty vegans are the ones who are forcing their horrible ideas down my throat, and they're wrong, because otherwise my entire identity, my entire sense of worth, my entire sense of having, this wonderful heritage of doing this wonderful work is now in jeopardy. And I don't want to experience that sense of identity being shattered.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, that's something we've learned too, in the work we've done, is that a lot of these farmers too are victims themselves. A lot of these workers, these employees at slaughterhouses, meat processing plants are victims too. And we fight for the humans as well, as part of the animal rights movement.
Absolutely. Actually, can we start talking about you guys a little bit? Because I mean, you bring up it's a great segue, because you guys do some amazing things at slaughterhouses where you are pro-human beings as well as pro animals. So can you like I gave sort of the story of how Kindred Spirits Care Farm started. Can you give me a little story about how those annoying vegans started, how you met, and what you do and how you do it?
Yeah. Well, Anna and I met at a wedding in 2015. We were both groom's people at the wedding. They didn't divide their bridal party and groom's party by gender. They just did, the bride had her party and then the groom had his party, and there were men and women in both.
Oh, that's cool.
So we were both in the groom's party. So we both knew the groom, didn't know each other. That's how we met. I guess the fast version is...
I was vegetarian at the time.
Yeah, she was vegetarian at the time.
I had watched Earthlings in 2010. Stopped eating animal flesh that day.
Yeah.
Didn't quite make the connection to dairy, eggs, or fish. Still asking myself why to this day, but it took me about 5 years.
I think almost all vegans have a similar story. It's like, I missed dairy for like decades, and before some person, thank God, informed me, like, Karen, why are you still eating dairy? I mean, how I thought, my mommy told me when I was a little girl, hey, you have to milk cows or else the cows are in pain. Why I never questioned that for decades, I don't know, but I didn't.
It's like we knew, but we didn't understand. There's a difference between, we always say that, there's a difference between knowing and understanding. And although we knew and we had seen the footage, there was still some kind of disconnect where we were still trying to hold on to these habits, these traditions, these, when people go vegan, sometimes they feel overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing to eat. And I suppose back then, I don't know that we knew of that many dairy, egg alternatives, But I mean, we eventually made the connection. Brian was a full-on meat eater.
Yeah.
And
when we met, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you eat from there was a pig flesh buffet,
No.
a bacon buffet. You didn't eat from that?
No, because remember the bridal parties were kept in that
Oh,
room.
that was for
and
our.
then
Oh,
no, it's like I think the bridal party was kept in a room while the guests were eating, and then the bridal party like made an entrance for
That's
the
right.
reception, and then the bride and groom made an entrance for the reception. And by the time that had happened, I think the whole bacon bar had been
bacon
consumed
bar,
entirely.
unfortunately. But I
But
believe
I probably did eat meat at the dinner, right?
I believe the bride, if I'm not mistaken, currently is plant-based. I
Yeah.
don't know about vegan. We haven't spoken about details, but
Right.
but fast forwarding, you
Yeah.
know, we do you want to tell them that part?
Well, yeah, we started dating right away, and then I was the one that decided to pull away from the relationship. We actually sat down and talked at a Starbucks about like basically I wanted to sit down and talk at the Starbucks and say how I didn't think the relationship was going to work. You know, I wasn't ready for a committed relationship at the time, and I just,
And I had
bunch of-
cats, and you were super allergic, and
and I eat meat and she didn't. So
you actually brought that
That's
up
a
as
big
a-
one for
Yeah.
sure.
and so and a lot of it was just a lot of excuses.
Because I wasn't, I honestly wasn't even
No, she
like
wasn't.
at the point where that made a difference to me in a relationship. I guess I wasn't that far along my
No.
vegan journey.
And you weren't pressuring me to eat meat. And
No.
actually, on like our second date or third date, I made a vegetarian lasagna for us. Like I just decided to do that because I knew you were vegetarian. But yeah, I made a whole bunch of excuses. There were other reasons too, like a lot of reasons why I didn't want to be in a relationship with Anna. And it's not my proudest
Can't
moment.
even imagine that because she's like
I know.
an angel. It's
No.
like hello.
It's certainly
Very bad thinking on your part. Just saying.
It was poor judgment, and it's certainly not a time that I'm very proud of.
The important
But-
thing is that we, I said, all right, so let's be friends, and so we were friends, and 4 months later, you asked me.
Yeah,
out,
4 months later,
and
I asked her to be my girlfriend. So
5 months later, you asked me to marry you.
yeah,
And we're not married because we just were so busy, and honestly, like, well, that's a whole other story.
we started to plan
We're
a
taking our
wedding, and
time.
then realized that it was a lot of work and a lot of money and a lot of effort, and then we were like,
Let's just be engaged for a
let's be
while.
engaged. Let's save our money. Let's put that towards something else, and then we'll worry about officially getting married at some point.
But the day we moved in together, you stopped
Yes.
eating meat.
Yes, I want
the
I want to say that I did, but in the house for sure.
Is this something I don't know?
Well, no, because I'm thinking back
Outside of the
to
house,
I'm
yeah.
thinking back to when I would be at work, and I used to like walk across the street to this Albertsons, and I would get like these fried chicken tenders and French fries for lunch and stuff, and there was also a Subway, and there was a Wendy's, and there's all the stuff that Americans normally eat. So I may have eaten meat outside, but never at home. Like
Yeah.
we never bought meat for the house when we moved in.
And we honestly don't remember the day that we went vegan. We don't have an official veganversary. We scoured our emails to find clues recently, and
Yeah.
and our Facebook posts. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
and
we
so
were
on
trying to figure out
February,
when we went vegan.
we posted a picture of a lasagna in February. Is that real cheese? Is that real cow
I was like,
cheese?
that looks like follow your heart Parmesan to me. I don't know.
We were like, we spent like an hour doing this, and
But
then
that's cool. Actually,
kinda
that in
narrowed it
itself
down.
is actually a really interesting thing. The fact that you couldn't tell whether that was vegan cheese or not. 'Cause
happened
way back when I went
naturally.
vegetarian, vegan cheese was a nightmare. So you would know for sure.
We
The fact that you
couldn't
couldn't tell
tell.
says great things about the
Yeah.
evolution of vegan cheese.
That's a good point. Yeah, we did. We couldn't tell. We did narrow it down to maybe like there was a week or maybe a couple weeks. So we picked a date because what happened was I think it was just we were at a Trader Joe's one day and we were like, you know what? If we stop buying this Parmesan cheese that we buy, this haul is completely
The
vegan.
whole grocery haul would be vegan.
And I think maybe we don't remember, but I think maybe we might have watched some Aaron Janice videos
And we watched Cowspiracy together. I remember that.
yeah, and further like cemented
Mhm.
the connection for us. So maybe that was part of the catalyst for that. But yeah, then we went vegan, and that's it. We've been vegan since then. And then, I think
So what is your vegan anniversary?
What did we pick? No, we don't even remember.
Did we pick January 1st?
I know. I think it was
January
February.
1st?
I have to look
February
again.
1st?
Because
I think-
mine's January
All
1st,
that work.
2008.
Oh, well, ours would be January 1st, 2016, or February 1st, 2016.
Yeah, I think
one of the
it
two.
was February.
February 1st,
Yeah.
2016.
See, now we don't
That's-
even remember
yeah,
all
we
that
don't
work.
know.
But so what happens when you go vegan is you have to deal with people. And that's kind of how our channel started. Is, people kept asking us, like, well, what do you guys eat? Well, what do vegans eat? There's nothing to eat. And we're like, we have to do something about that.
Yeah. So we started a YouTube channel, and we called ourselves Those Annoying Vegans because we wanted to sort of, take the impact out of that word.
Yeah.
Because at the time, it was sort of like, and I'd say at the time, it's 3 years ago. It's not like way back in the day or anything. But I feel like even in the last 3 years, the vegan movement has grown so much. And so 3 years ago, around 2016, it was April of 2016 when we made our first video. And at the time, I think veganism was this sort of, those annoying people that talk about, and so we called ourselves, we're annoying. And then we proceeded to make recipes on our channel and try to be the least annoying as we could, and back everything up with facts and studies and health information, and make foods that people really wanted to eat, like a cheese stuffed hamburger.
Exactly.
Or meat lovers pizza.
right,
We called it animal lovers pizza.
I like it.
It was like vegan pepperoni, vegan sausage,
Just loaded it up.
Yeah, we made a chili, we
Some
made
of our
French toast.
Some of our first recipes were not all that healthy.
Oh, they're not healthy whatsoever.
No,
But
we wanted to get people.
Flavor is going to
Yeah.
bring
Flavor,
people along a lot faster
yeah.
and a lot more real ways than health. Because some people want to be vegan, but they're like, oh God, then I have to eat grass and broccoli, right? I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So if you show them that no, whatever it is that you used to eat, you can still eat it. It may not be that as healthy as it could be, but you could still have the things that you love, your comfort foods, the things that make you feel like, okay, it's going to be all right. You still have the vegan version of that. That's huge. That's a huge bridge between one place and another emotionally. So that's great. That's great stuff.
And at the very least, the vegan version of whatever animal food you ate will not have cholesterol. Because as we know, cholesterol is only found in animal products.
Right.
And that's something I didn't know before we went vegan. And I didn't know, I didn't know a lot about the dairy industry. I didn't know that baby calves were stolen away from their mothers. It makes sense.
Totally.
I didn't know that baby male chicks were ground up alive. Like, we sort of went on this discovery together.
And as we did, our channel evolved as well to include more. So at first it was just recipes, and we would strictly talk about the recipes, but then we started talking about ethics. Like, we couldn't help it. We're like, we have to talk about this. And then it sort of evolved to where we are now, which is literally just talking about, debunking misinformation and other YouTubers and whatnot,
Yeah.
because, we started our activism about a year ago, which was like last April 2018. We attended a workshop that vegan couple, Natasha and Luca from Australia, they came to the United States. They were doing a tour, and they did an activism workshop, and we attended. I remember I think that was the weekend that one of our cats passed away, and I was like, I don't feel like doing anything. But, it's amazing how that just getting to that workshop has fueled everything that we've done since then. And that includes attending our first Cube of Truth, and many more since then, attending animal vigils. Now we co-organize the cow and chicken vigil with LA Animal Save.
I was going to say, can you tell, I don't know how many people watching know what a Cube of Truth is, so maybe you can tell a little bit about what that is, and also Animal Save, so they know what that is too, because maybe we can find people who actually want to help participate in that.
Sure. I'll do cube, you do the vigil. A Cube of Truth is it's sort of a public demonstration and outreach attempt for it's an outreach event for veganism. It's organized by a group called Anonymous for the Voiceless, and they're an international organization. They do Cubes of Truth in many countries all over the world. They're all basically the same. What they'll do is they'll have a group of individuals. It can be as tiny as 2 people, or it can be as large as 100 people. It doesn't matter.
And that's happened.
And that's happened. There have been 100-person cubes. So people, there are two roles in a cube of truth. One is there's a square. People stand in a cube shape, and they're holding laptops or television monitors. And on those laptops and television monitors, they're playing footage from a factory farm, or footage.
Standard industry.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, this one employee at this one farm who happens to be abusive to the animals. No, they show standard industry practice. Just chickens being slaughtered, cows being slaughtered, baby male chicks being ground up alive in the egg industry. Just this is what happens. And they're wearing the Guy Fawkes masks from V for Vendetta, for those that don't know. And then the other role in the Cube of Truth is there will be other people standing around wearing the black shirts and the Guy Fawkes mask usually on their arms so that they know they're part of the demonstration. And they'll simply walk around and ask people who stop to watch what they think about the footage and how they feel and what does it make you feel? Does it make you feel hungry? Does it make you feel sad? Why do you think that is? And if they don't know, because a lot of people don't know what goes on in these industries, they don't even know what this footage is that they're looking at. And so we tell them. And the great part about the Cube of Truth is that no matter what country you're in, they always try to show footage from that country. Because inevitably somebody will come on, if it's in Australia, somebody will go, oh, that's American footage.
Those horrible Americans.
Horrible Americans do that.
They do that. We don't do that.
We don't do that
I've
here.
seen that on Facebook all the time from various other countries. Like, oh, well, that's those Americans do that factory farming. Here in Britain, we don't do factory farming.
They'll say,
Everything's wonderful.
No, this is not only a factory farm in England, this is RSPCA approved. This is the most humane way to slaughter these animals that is approved by the RSPCA. And that's a Cube of Truth, you know. And then at the end, if the conversation goes well or if it doesn't go well, you know, conversations
Either way,
take
it goes
all
well
sorts
because you plant a seed. You know, you get them thinking. You start a conversation, and they're eventually going to hear vegan from every direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I always see it as a positive, even if they walk away going like, "Yeah, no, that's not for me." But most of the time, I find that people are very receptive.
And we have these little cards that we give them
with resources
in the conversation. Yeah, and it'll have links to Earthlings and Dominion and speeches by Gary Yourofsky on YouTube and What the Health and all these resources they can check out when they get home.
And as for the SAVE movement is made up of over 600 vigil. The SAVE movement holds about 600 vigils all over the world. It's international. And it's
600 vigils a week, a month, a year.
Like
altogether?
Locations.
There's
Locations.
600 SAVE groups.
SAVE groups.
Wow.
Yes. In Central America, in Europe, in South America, in the U.S., of course. And the SAVE movement started with a woman named Anita Kreintz, and she was arrested in, do you remember the year?
2015, I believe she was arrested.
For giving water to pigs on a slaughter truck in Canada, in Toronto. And she was arrested, and it was a 2-year court battle, and she was eventually acquitted. So that set the precedent, and now we can give water to pigs, and that's what we do.
I'm sorry, that's just blowing my mind. It's like someone had to spend 2 years in court dealing with being attacked because she gave water to pigs.
Yeah, because they're seen as property. They're seen as property.
So giving property water?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we've also been
illegal
accused
move?
Yeah, we've also been accused of like poisoning the water or putting things in the water. People have said like, well, they say they're giving the pigs water, but what are they really giving the pigs? It's like, I don't know. It's going into
a slaughterhouse in a few minutes. So what is it that we're doing?
Well, if what we're putting into the pig's body is somehow poisonous, you don't think that the people who ate that meat would have experienced something by now?
Especially in Los Angeles, the pig vigil at where we hold a pig vigil, that's been happening for 2 years now, over 2 years. And so someone would have noticed by now, I'm sure. But no, we give the pigs water because they travel far distances like Iowa, Idaho, South Dakota, Arizona, through the desert in extreme cold and extreme hot temperatures. And they are parched. And I mean, imagine sitting on those trucks, on those steel bed trucks, in your own filth for days.
It's just a metal box. For those that don't know, pigs and cows are transported in a giant steel rectangular box with these little portholes.
Same with the cows, and like I said, we co-organize the cow vigil and the chicken vigil as well. And with the cows, every vigil's different, and every vigil is going to be, some vigils around the world are 2 people strong, and that's okay. They have to start somewhere. And people ask us, like, what is the point of a vigil? What is the point of giving the pigs water or giving the animals comfort if they're going to die anyway? Like, aren't you giving them hope? Isn't that tricking them into thinking that something good's going to happen? And we're like, well, for one, the SAVE movement bases itself around the idea that bearing witness is we come closer to those who are suffering and we try to relieve it. We would like the pigs to leave this world thinking that there is hope. And if it takes, a little drink of water to make them feel a little bit better, then isn't that a good thing? Isn't spending time with the cows, speaking to them in gentle voices, showing them that we care, that we are fighting for them? That makes a difference. And not to mention the documentation of it all, because people hear these things, but when you're there and you're the bridge between the animals and your friends and family, and you show your friends and family, I'm here, I'm seeing this with my own eyes. Look at this. This is a cow and she's dying right now. That helps cement the connection.
Makes it real, for sure. I mean, I know just from having seen photographs of this, it's something so visceral. I mean, it's so easy for us in our world these days to completely divorce ourselves from the hideous realities of what brings these red lumps of gook into our grocery stores, right? We don't want to know, we don't want to see, we don't want to hear. We want to think that this red lump of stuff is just, this is a food thing. We take it, we unwrap it, we charbroil it in some kind of way or whatever
Vegan
it is
food.
we do to it.
Usually we cover it with vegan food.
Yeah, we cover it with vegan spices and exactly. We soak it in like orange juice for a while or whatever, and then they cook it in some kind. I haven't eaten flesh for over 40 years, so I don't even remember how all that works. But and then they want to think of it as a food item, not as a chunk of the thigh of a pig.
Well, that's why people freak out when a chicken head pops up in their chicken nuggets or pig nipples pop out in their bacon.
Be on their bacon.
It's like, hello, what
they're
did you
horrified.
think? Yeah, they're horrified, as if they didn't know that this comes from an animal.
But that's the disconnect that you were talking about before. Yeah. For them, it doesn't come from an animal. From them, it comes from, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And Kentucky Fried Chicken is supposed to pasteurize and sort of nullify the animalness of this, and it becomes the nugget. And a nugget is just something that you eat. A nugget is not some part of some chicken from somewhere or parts that are all smushed together in some patty. They don't want to make that connection. They don't want that connection. They will avoid that connection very strongly. That's why when the chicken head shows up, they are outraged and they will sue because how dare you put chicken in my chicken parts?
Exactly.
That's just horrific. How could I'm traumatized and I want money.
So that's what we do. We put faces to the victims. We take our phones and we go, look at this face. Like, would you go up to this pig and tell this pig to their face that your taste buds matter more than this pig's life? I mean, this sounds, it's very base, what I'm about to say, but our taste pleasure lasts seconds, maybe a minute or two, and then we poop it right out. That's a life that we're pooping out.
Exactly.
Essentially, that's our whole life. And the taste pleasure can be satisfied with plant-based alternatives that taste just as good, if not better. I mean, some are so close in taste to the animal flesh version that some vegans won't eat it.
Yeah,
exactly. Like I got a piece of plant-based ham in a ramen one time that I had to put aside because it was marbled, it was rubbery. I was like, oh my gosh, this is too creepy. So, but yeah. We have to mention the good news about our chicken vigils.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the obvious news is that we, as you know, we've managed to rescue 4 chickens now from that slaughterhouse with the help of some of our fellow activists, you know.
And the help of 2 employees.
Absolutely.
Well.
Super
That
great.
was one of the things we were going to touch on, is that these employees, as much as people want to, you know, rap on them for participating in the industry, they are not, more often than not, they are very kind, compassionate human beings. And in 2 cases, they have helped us rescue 2 of the chickens that we've brought here.
Patty and Jose were both given to us by employees.
We asked and they
We
gave.
asked and they gave.
Yeah, it's so easy to demonize them as if somehow they're personally responsible for this industry, and they're victims just like the animals are so often, especially the slaughterhouse workers.
They're working a job and they don't even like the job.
Of course, and it's a horrible job. It's a soul. Talk about a soul-killing job,
It's dangerous
and
too.
physically dangerous and physically noxious. I mean, even if you don't get sliced up yourself somehow, the smell and the blood and the parts and things. It's just it's like I can't even imagine a worse job than being a slaughterhouse worker. And emotionally, I mean, it definitely takes its toll. I mean, they have documented that slaughterhouse workers, you know, like they wind up taking out their rage and their impotence and their horror out in their family lives. They start drinking or doing drugs to numb themselves, and or they start experiencing more violence in the rest of their lives besides just the violence they experience and are kind of numbing themselves to in the slaughterhouse. It's just a terrible. So they're killing lives, and their lives are also being killed. Their own sense of dignity, everything else is. But these people work there not because they like it. This is not a job people go, oh, like I can't wait to be a slaughterhouse worker. They work there because they can't get anything else.
We actually put out a video about that very topic a couple weeks ago called No Hate for Slaughterhouse Workers. And we touched on all the statistics and all of that. It's, you know, they are forced to shut off because and people think, you know, I think it's a little, people tend to bring up they're making a choice. It's a choice. They can work there if they want to, but there's always going to be someone to fill those spots as long as there is demand. So, and we're not in their place. We don't know. A lot of these workers are illegal immigrants. They're people from
Undocumented. Yeah, no human being is illegal.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
a pet peeve of mine.
Wrong word choice. Everyone's welcome. But yes, they are undocumented, so they get taken advantage of. And you know, they're in fear of losing their jobs, which makes reporting injuries and work problems, unhealthy work environments. It makes it very hard for them to report that because they're in fear of getting deported or fired.
And we spoke to one ex-slaughterhouse employee too, and I think he was an ex-convict, and that's another large percentage of slaughterhouse workers are people that have this thing on their record, so they can't get a great job, even though, you know, like I like to believe that second chances, like everyone should get a second chance. And this guy we talked to, he's like, yeah, I did this, you know, I think it was like selling drugs or something that he got busted for. He's like, I did this. It's part of my past. I can't get rid of it now. I'm a changed person now, but still I have this thing on my record.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, if we want people to change, which we do, we want people to learn new information and go through new experiences and change their beliefs and change their actions based on those experiences. I feel like we have to give people a second chance, and selfishly, I want to give people a second chance because I want a second chance. like I would want the ability to
Absolutely.
to learn from my mistakes and change. And that's something that I look back on, you know, speaking about like when Anna and I first got together. It's like I feel like I made a big mistake early in our relationship, but it led me to where I am now. So can I say that I regret it? I don't know, because all the choices that I made and all the choices that we've made through our vegan journey and becoming vegan activists, they've all made us who we are today.
Yeah.
And
they've led us here.
They've led us here.
To this very place.
And I had no idea.
And we're so glad you're here and that you keep coming back.
I mean, Kindred Spirits Care Farm is our little retreat, and that's why we come every week. I mean, not only are the chickens here, the roosters mostly. It's 3 roosters. We found out roosters are not immune to the meat industry. 3 roosters and 1 chicken, and all the piggies and the alpacas, and everyone's here, and there's such a strong, beautiful, strong community, and it helps us heal. It helps us keep doing what we do and continue to be active. You know, it's as hard as it gets to go to, as hard as it can be to go to vigils, and of course they're hard. They're supposed to be. That's how you should feel. Coming here helps us heal from that. You know, we're like, okay, but then there's always Kindred Spirits Care Farm on Saturday. Let's just pull through.
I love how you sort of circled right back around to what the value that a care farm can bring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not only is it about value to the kids who are here and the community members who come and visit and the people who tour, but it was a totally unexpected value, which is to help heal people who are doing really difficult work out there in the vegan movement. And it can be absolutely traumatizing to do some of the work that you guys are doing out in slaughterhouses. I mean, I haven't been to a vigil yet because I'm terrified of completely losing it altogether.
Yeah, many of
Standing
us
outside a
were.
truck.
We're all terrified.
Yeah,
The first
everyone
of
was
us.
there one time. I think, and everyone deals with the grief differently. Some people don't, like for me, I thought that we put it off for a year from the first time someone asked us. And I always say it's like with veganism, we wish we'd done it sooner because we've seen the value that it brings. And for anyone who's interested in coming and worried about feeling too sad or breaking down, it's okay. It's not, we're trying to make that emotion not taboo anymore. Like, it's okay to break down because you will have a community there that supports you. I mean, that's part of what helps us too, is we keep going because there are people, all the people around us are feeling the same way. We're all in this together. And I can't tell you how many people message us saying that the images and videos we post have had an impact on them. People who are like, I want to go vegan. And that makes it all worth it.
Huge. That is huge.
Yeah, I always tell people, well, 2 things that we always kind of say to people. One is we've never met a vegan who went to a vigil and said they wish they hadn't gone. in the same way that you never meet a vegan who says, I wish I never went vegan.
Yeah.
Because every vegan says, the best decision did I ever make in my life.
Right. And I wish I'd done it
Vegan.
sooner.
And I wish I'd done it sooner. Every vegan activist who goes to a pig vigil, same thing.
Wow.
It changed my life. I wish I had done it sooner.
So if
And
someone who's hearing this wants to attend a pig vigil or learn more about those annoying vegans or Cubes of Truth, how would they get more information?
Well, they can follow us. Just hit us up at Those Annoying Vegans on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for LA Animal Save pig vigils and cow vigils and chicken vigils, you can follow LA Animal Save on Instagram and Facebook. And then Animal Alliance Network also has a pig vigil on Wednesdays. So follow Animal Alliance Network.
yeah.
And for Kindred Spirits Care Farm, you want to hang out with us, we also have a Facebook page as well as a website, which is pretty simple, kindredspiritscarefarm.org. We pretty much use all, those are our names, so we use that every time.
Yeah.
Terrific. Was there anything else you want to add before we sort of wrap this thing up?
Well, I'll add something. I think that I feel like the word and the whole idea of change is something that people resist.
Yes.
And we actually, kind of, did we make a video about this recently? About the, we made Insta stories about it, about letting go and change. We had this sort of theme. And change is hard for human beings, but if there's one constant in this world, it is change. And everyone changes throughout the course of their life. And I think that the more open we are to change, the more open we are to new ideas, and the more open we are to other people's points of view and what other people have to say, I think that the world will be better for it. And I know me personally, I when I met Anna, I was closed off to change, and then I opened myself up to change. And I feel like I've been trying to do that in the past 3 years, as we've gone along this vegan journey. you never been to a pig vigil? Experience it. Never been to a chicken vigil? Experience it. Never tried this vegan food? Experience it. Never met a chicken in person, which I hadn't really until we rescued one off of a slaughter truck. I had no idea what chickens were like and how loving and kind and domesticated
And
they are, just
fun.
like dogs and cats.
Yeah,
They're so fun. They're quirky, and they all have different personalities.
yeah, exactly. Which is why we have sanctuaries, so people can learn exactly those things. So people can meet a chicken and kind of go, oh my gosh, chicken isn't just a nugget on a hoof.
No.
A chicken, like this chicken is different from that one, different from that one. They have very different personalities. Some are feisty, and some are like bookworms, and some of them are very, very prim and proper, and some of them are very, they're just like, there's everything you can think of in terms of human personalities. You can find the same thing in the chicken land, and they are fabulous and lovely. And I've had my own friends in my own backyard for 10 years now, and they're like the best companions. They are so much fun. And that's just a chicken component. The same can be said for pigs and goats and sheep and every animal that's out there. It's
They're
like,
a gift to this planet.
meet them in person, man. That makes all the difference.
Does.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Did you have anything you wanted to?
No, I'm
You're
good.
good?
Yeah, I think.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Being the very first podcast, it's like, yay.
thank
We
you.
just,
Thanks for
speaking of
having us.
change and starting a new thing and trying something out.
That's right.
Here we are doing it right now.
Well,
Though we
you
have, like-
changed my life.
Yes, yes.
And you've changed our life.
And you changed my life, and for the better, for sure. But we have 50 people out there wanting to volunteer on the farm today, so we should
Got
probably
some
get out there
painting
and
some
Yeah,
do
if
some
you
good
wanna
things for the
volunteer-
animals.
If you want to volunteer at Kindred Spirits Care Farm, reach out to Karen at Kindred Spirits Care Farm.
Yes, right. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
for
guys.
having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.